Sorry, I was just getting into the amazing story of God parting the Red Sea when my granddaughter came up to the door and knocked on the car door. So I had to stop. So I'm going to continue from there. Well, what a magnificent story, a real story of God showing up for the Israelites to deliver them. And not only that, he does the miracles he does are magnificent. So here they are coming out of bondage. They've been slaves for 400 years. And as Moses brings them, they come to a stopping point. They look ahead, and there is the Red Sea. Not just a river, but a sea in front of them. And as they looked, they probably thought, oh no, what are we going to do now? Because as they looked back, guess what? Here comes Pharaoh with all of his army of chariots as fast as they could to come back and grab the Israelites and take them back into bondage. No, the 10 plagues just made Pharaoh even more angry. And he said, those are my slaves, and I am going to go and get them. So as the chariots come, they could probably hear the horses and the chariots riding and maybe see the dust of it, like a whole dust storm. And as they look, there they see the Red Sea standing there. And on this side is the mountain, Pi-hahiroth, the huge mountain there. They can't go that way. They're thinking, Moses probably thought, which way, Lord? So he sought the Lord. He went to the sea. He walked up and he held up his arms, held up his staff. And God parted a sea for them, the Red Sea. On one side, you can imagine, I know maybe you've gone to the Monterey Bay aquariums and you could look through the glass and see fish and such. Was this glass? No. What caused this? It said a wind blew. The wind blew to it, just dried it up, and the winds held up the sea. It could be give you quite anxiety thinking, walking through, wow, is this safe? Well, as Moses went, 3 million people, 2 or 3 million people of the Israelites followed with all their supplies and all their cattle and sheep, and they all went through. And they watched as the wind held up the sea on both sides. And then they could hear the chariots coming. You could imagine they were rushing and hurrying to get out of the sea, to keep going and going. They came across to the desert area. And looking back, the chariots followed. Pharaoh said, go after them, go after them. Follow. What happened, you know? The wind stopped holding up the sea, and it fell in great torrents. And the chariots were flung here and there, and the waters engulfed them with huge stormy current underneath, pulling them and churning them with the waves. The Pharaoh's army perished. And do you know now they've been excavating the Red Sea, and guess what they found? Chariots and bones under a certain part of the Red Sea. Archaeological evidence now coming that this really happened. So they get to the other side, and so what do? They sing praises. Miriam got out her tambourines and sang, and all the women with her. And then Moses, and they sang a song of praise of what happened, the miracle would happen, that they would not forget. Although people forget sometimes God's miracles. Have you ever had God do a miracle where you could see God parted the Red Sea for me? Oh, I have multiple times when I know that God showed up. Just as significant as him parting the Red Sea. When I was a new Christian, he parted the Red Sea in the midst, anyone knowing the Lord, only me, and the persecution, and God showed up magnificently. God showed up at a time when I thought that my daughter would not survive. She was hit by a car in a coma only at 5 years old. And God showed up and parted the Red Sea for me. God showed up in finances when we thought we lost everything. And then he showed up and gave us back everything and more. God is a magnificent God. And recently, I went through a crisis where I couldn't see my grandkids. You know about that crisis. And you know what? I went to listen to a sermon in Southern California about one of my favorite pastors, John Corson. I've never seen him in person except this time. And his message, he came in and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, do you know that God has changed the message? I know this is like a marriage seminar, but I am going to teach on surrendering your children and your grandchildren to the Lord." And he gave the message of how God parted the Red Sea. And then he said, "Now, Miriam," you know, my name's Marianne. He said, "Now, Miriam, why don't you get your tambourine and start singing on this side of the Red Sea? Because God is going to part the Red Sea for you." And this is true. I stood and I cried with tears in my eyes, and I knew that God was in control. And he parted the Red Sea for me. My son-in-law got saved. And I got to see my daughter and kids again. Now, you guys know that story, but the thing is, it's not a story. God answers prayers. He parts the Red Sea for us many times. Maybe you're just little kids right now and you think, well, haven't really experienced that. Maybe you'll start to have experience in the smaller of things, where you know that God has answered your prayers. And you know that there's no coincidence about it, that God is with us. He loves us so much that he wants to part the Red Sea for us. And one day we'll be in heaven and we'll be able to all rejoice about all the times in our life where God has showed up magnificently. And we'll be getting out our tambourines and our pianos and our guitars and our shofars and our voices and singing all together and praising God for all the wonderful times and wonderful miracles he has done in our life. Well, that's what I think about this part of the Bible in Exodus, but it's also in the history books. And everyone knows, all of Israel knows how God showed up in this spectacular event. Isn't it wonderful when we can apply history to us? That it's God's story in dealing with mankind. And when we fall in love with him and we become his child, and then he takes us in and he just wants to show up for us over and over and over and over. Isn't that wonderful? I love life because I love Jesus.